Oh, hi. Thanks for joining us. It's another Tech Takeaways. My name is Paul Stringfellow, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jason Fitzgerald.
Hi.
So that was cheesy, wasn't it? But that's kind of well, cheesy isn't the point of this episode, but, I've got myself a brew. And what myself and Jason were doing, kind of while Wayne's away, the lads will play, we're just going a little bit of fun with this episode around some of the common misconceptions that we hear when we talk to people about IT. So it's kind of a bit of a relaxed chat, really. Just myself and Jason.
Yeah.
My cup of coffee, his fruity tea.
I've got a honey tea.
Yeah, honey tea.
It's lovely, yeah.
It's very fruity.
Honey and ginger, I've been told. News just in, it's got ginger in it.
yeah. Breaking news from our lovely host here at the Liverpool Podcast Studio. So we really wanted to pick on kind of 3, maybe 4 if we've got time. Little areas where we hear people say things about IT, and we just kind of wanted to cover why those things aren't true. Now, some of these are things that we're hearing increasingly less as people become more aware of the reality of some of the things, some of these kind of statements. But some of them we still hear regularly. We're steering clear of conspiracy theories. Jason got some great feedback from a couple of listeners to the podcast who shared some of their thoughts on IT things that they hear. But we're going to kind of steer clear of them because they were a bit conspiracy-esque from our taste. But so I suppose we're kind of entitling this episode, My IT is Good Because. Let's jump in, Jason. What are some of the things that you hear, and let's have a dig around some of them.
I mean, we've both worked in IT for a while now, and we've heard some absolutely outrageous claims over this time. I think one of the things that we frequently still hear is, I've put my data into Office 365 and it's safe. Microsoft are backing it up. Microsoft are securing it. I've put it into M365 and I don't have to worry about it. And we still hear it now. I think the podcast, it helps. We're spreading awareness that way, but we still hear it. We heard it yesterday.
Yeah, I think we absolutely do. And actually, before we started recording, you shared with me a comment from one of our customers, probably the family-friendly version of what he said.
It's your data. It's your responsibility to back it up.
Yeah, he used some expletives in there,
I'm not going to use
he
that.
kind of made the point.
My mum might listen.
Yeah, he kind of made the point. Hi, mum. But that idea that we are so almost kind of absconding our responsibility for something.
Thrown over the wall.
Yeah, we put it in the cloud, and we've given it. And this is true not just Microsoft 365. It's true if it's Google Workspace. It's true if you're putting data into Salesforce. That those providers are just giving you a platform. They're giving you the platform to run your business on, and they take care of certain stuff, don't they? They're taking care of infrastructure availability. They take care of security to a point.
They take care of the stuff that's theirs to take care of, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're paying for access to their platform. They take care of the stuff that gives you access to their platform, because if you can't access their platform, quite bluntly, you're not going to pay for it. They want you to pay for it. It's their platform. They want to make sure it's available.
Yeah.
They make sure it's available and secure enough that you can gain access to it and want to pay for it because of it.
Yeah, and I think that's, and that kind of, on the flip side of kind of this, one of the things that we talk to people about a lot is that they will question if they're going to move to cloud, and we'll talk about Microsoft 365 specifically here.
Okay.
If they're going to move to Microsoft 365, they'll often say things like, I'm concerned of moving to cloud because of security. But I think, we've probably both pointed out to people that the amount of money that Microsoft spend on securing Microsoft 365 as a platform, and the technology and skill sets and engineers that they've got, you're never going to match that as an organization. So I suppose there is a flip side to that. Yeah,
it's true to a certain extent, isn't it? If you're looking at your infrastructure, and let's take Exchange, for example. So you can either build Exchange on-prem or you can take Exchange online. Okay, so let's look at the options. You build it on-prem, you've got to make sure it's available, make sure that it is online for users to be able to send and receive emails. And as soon as that goes offline, your users will complain about it. I can't send emails. Can you get it back online? And that's you're responsible to get that back online. Exchange Online, though, it's Microsoft's responsibility to make sure it's online so that you keep paying for that service.
Yep.
You're not going to pay for a service that's not available. And it's that kind of trade-off of saying, do I build it myself? Okay, well, Microsoft probably hire more engineers to look after Exchange uptime than what in most organizations. Most organizations may have a small IT team or maybe, one or two people to look after it. So are you going to get a better uptime through Microsoft? I would say most times, yeah.
And I think with software as a service platforms, because I think it's important to distinguish between what is cloud and software as a service. But for software as a service, so Microsoft 365, their job is make sure the infrastructure is there for you to put your data in. But I suppose the key thing, and going back to the kind of the customer comment that included expletives, but was the idea that it is your data. However, Microsoft, if you're not familiar with it, Microsoft kind of have a document which is the almost kind of the data responsibility
the shared responsibility model, is that?
That's the phrase. That's what I was looking for.
And it's not almost. It looks like Connect 4 kind of thing, isn't it? These are the things that you're responsible for. These are the things that Microsoft is responsible for. So I think to address this one head on. Putting your data in M365 doesn't automatically mean that Microsoft are going to look after it, because they won't.
Yeah, and I think that the two things specifically that they're not going to do for you, one is they are not backing it up. So if you delete that data inside of Microsoft 365, or, increasingly, the prevalence of ransomware, if you have a ransomware attack on your Microsoft 365 data, Microsoft are not going to magically recover that for you. So if somebody deletes it, there are things like there are recycle bins in SharePoint. There are some policies you can set around data, but ultimately it's your responsibility to make sure you've got kind of a data retention period set. And if you don't want data deleting, you can apply controls to stop data being deleted. But if you're just leaving it in there and suddenly somebody comes along and deletes a whole bunch of data that they shouldn't have done, can't go to Microsoft and say any chance I can have it back, because they're just going to say no. So it's, and then the other thing that they're not doing is they're not securing that information. If you are, we did a previous episode on this where we talked about data loss prevention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you are allowing your users to overshare sensitive information and you don't want to apply controls to it, again, no good crying to Microsoft or Google or anybody else to say, how did you let them share that data? Because your rules allow them to do so. So I think we've made a point there, haven't we?
It's your data, look after it.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. So what about while we're sticking on cloud misconceptions, another good one that I kind of quite like, and I think again increasingly we're seeing that this is that people are starting to realise that maybe this is not the case, but I think it's one worth addressing. I'm going to the cloud because that must be cheaper than me doing it. What's the reality of that?
Reality for me is, the reality is it depends. It depends what you're doing in the cloud, isn't it? If you're hiring a IT team to look after Exchange, so going back to the Exchange example versus paying Exchange Online, if we look at the costs with Exchange Online, it's really predictable. We've got a price per user. We know how many users are on it. Times the two together gives you the price of Exchange Online. When we look at on-prem IT of doing the same thing, well, okay, where do you start counting? You've got staff overheads to keep it online. We've got the licensing costs. We've got the platform costs. We've got all that kind of stuff. So is it cheaper? It depends. And the reason why it depends is that there's different ways to do things in the cloud. Yeah. You could build your own email server in the cloud and put it in and run it 24/7. Is that going to be more expensive than paying for Exchange Online? Yeah, probably. If we look at SQL servers, database servers are a prime example. Put a server in Azure or AWS or Google or any cloud provider, you're going to pay price per hour for that to be online. As soon as you say, I want that to be resilient, you're paying twice. The cost double. You run it 24/7. Is it cheaper? No.
And I think it's a good differentiation, actually, that there's a difference between, we talked about this before, actually, there's a difference between software as a service, which is a lot more predictable. So, if you're using Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace or Salesforce or Dropbox, it costs you per user per month for this service. So there's a predictability to that. Yeah. But then there's also kind of the cloud infrastructure routine, or routes. I'm running some services in AWS, I'm running some services in Azure, in GCP. I'm doing that. They are, by definition, part of the value of doing that, by definition, is it gives me flexibility and scale. So if I need to flex up, flex down, I can do that. But what that also brings is less predictability in terms of cost. And that idea that if I'm running we talk about this a lot when you look at cloud migration, actually, that the idea that people will look at, got a VMware estate on-prem, running everything 24/7. So what they'll do is they'll just lift and shift that and put it in the cloud because, hey, when I look at the top level price, a cloud, it only cost me pennies per day to run that service. But when you're running that every hour of every day of every year, then soon those costs rack up. And I think the reality for a lot of people, and I think the realization, so if we part software as a service with predictable costs for a moment, but the idea of that is that if you're moving to that kind of cloud infrastructure because you think it's going to be cheaper, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, exactly. If you're moving to cloud for a cost reason, you're probably, as you say, moving for the wrong reasons. If you're moving to cloud because there's this feature that I want to take advantage of, and it would be very hard for me to build in my on-prem infrastructure or very difficult for me to do in any other way, absolutely cloud can be leveraged to give you that feature, give you that functionality at a cost per month. Is it cheaper? Well, compared to what? Compared to doing it yourself? Yeah, now it is.
Yeah.
If you take and lift the whole infrastructure, as you said, it looks attractive. It's a 0.001 pence per hour. Okay, great. But times that by 50 servers, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That cost comes up quite a lot. It's not unheard of. Where organisations move to cloud thinking it's cheap.
Yeah.
And we're moving in. We're going to do it. We're just going to lift and shift everything in. 12, 18 months later, it's out again. It's migrated out because it doesn't stack up commercially. So I think it's kind of it's very difficult to say, is it cheaper? Is it not cheaper? I think that it depends on what you're doing. And I think that's the misconception, isn't it? It's that I'm moving to cloud because it's cheaper. Okay, well, in your case, it could be.
Yeah.
But not in every case. So
I think you made a great point actually earlier on though about that probably the driver to cloud should be it can this idea of tactical cloud use almost that it can things that are really difficult for me to do in my own infrastructure on-prem right now. Cloud can do scale. Cloud can do geolocation availability in ways that's really hard on-prem.
If you think about a shop that gets busy around December time because it's Christmas, November, December time, that infrastructure needs to flex up. And then in January, February, it needs to flex back down. Cloud's perfect for that.
Yeah.
It's a predictable cost model when it scales up and it's predictable when it scales down. That's tactical cloud. Putting it in to run 24/7 on a service that's scaled large to begin with, because you're getting that seasonal traffic, it's not a good way of using cloud.
So I think, almost a takeaway from that point for me is invest the time in understanding the reality of cost. If you need some kind of cloud cost operation software, there's lots of vendors out there providing that kind of thing. By all means, drop us a line. We can point you at vendors who are really strong in that space. Yeah. So I think that's a useful thing to be able to do.
And we could run assessment reports on that as well. So for anyone that is currently using cloud and thinking, I'm not sure if I'm getting the value from this, we can run an automation tool. It'll tell us what services are being used. Are they oversized? Are you paying too much for them? We can run that. That's completely free.
So the one I wanted to wrap up on, the last one we'll cover before Wayne comes back for the next episode and makes us behave.
We miss Wayne.
But he'll come back and make us behave next time. I suppose one of my favourites is, well, we can choose, actually. So I've got two topics. We haven't got time to do both.
Ooh, mystery.
Play your own podcast adventure, this one. Firstly, I'm too small or I'm not well known enough to be a security target, or you can go for, we work in IT, so we must know everything. Which one do you want to go for?
I'm going for the second one all day.
Okay,
absolutely, yeah.
Let's do that.
IT professionals don't know everything. The end.
Well, I know we were short on time, but yeah.
IT professionals are skilled in delivering IT services. Does that mean that they are good at providing cybersecurity incident response services? Yeah. No. It's a different skill set in that, you have a car mechanic and you may say, I've got an aeroplane, can you fix it? It's not the same thing. They're both mechanics, but they're different disciplines of mechanics. Yeah. It's different flavors of IT really. And, it's quite a common misconception, IT know everything technical about everything. And they just magically obtain this information one day by drinking from some kind of font. Doesn't work like that. I think, IT people are human beings. They learn in the same way as everyone else. We can't know everything. But, we like to learn,
It's a shocker, but it's true.
It is true.
I think actually from a business point of view, it's something worth bearing in mind. I think we expect in organisations, and we see this quite a lot, that a lot of organisations actually do expect that IT know everything, and IT, and we see this particularly in things like cybersecurity. We've talked about cloud, that people see cloud and think cloud's just dead easy, but these are really broad disciplines. We've talked in previous episodes that about things like AI. The idea that you go to your IT team who aren't doing any work in this space or have got no idea in this space particularly, and say, hey, what's the impact of running generative AI inside of the business? These are massive disciplines where, and some of these are just new and evolving technologies. So I think from an IT pro, I know we kind of started off, the reason this conversation came up was almost the idea of, we are the modern car mechanic, aren't we? And I said when I was growing up, if you knew a mechanic, it didn't matter. Every time you bumped into that mechanic, hey, there's a thing with my car. Could you have a look? Well, we get that now all the time. Oh, you work in IT? Now then, my phone's not working. My connection to Sky TV is not...
My dishwasher's broken. Yeah. Can you fix it? Oh, well, okay.
It's artificial intelligence in that dishwasher. Can't you sort it out?
Yeah.
So I think, but I think from a business point of view, it's also hugely important that in realise that sometimes it's not a failing of your IT professionals inside of your org to be able to say, I need some help, so don't discourage them from doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that for IT professionals, they're often under a lot of pressure to deal with things that you don't know a lot about. You mentioned generative AI, but you could say the same about cloud. If you've got an experienced IT professional, worked in IT for 30 years with traditional on-prem infrastructure, are they going to know everything about cloud? Well, they may do, because you might have learnt it, but not automatically, And I think that it's kind of, it treads almost in a resource kind of problem, this, within organisations, whereby, you look at, especially at cybersecurity incident response, whereby you say to the customer, and it's often the IT team, you're discussing with them and you say, if an incident was to happen at 3 a.m, who's responsible for dealing with it? Well, we're not sure. Okay, well, what hours do you guys work? Oh, well, we work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Okay, so something happens on a Saturday at 3 a.m, who's dealing with it? Well, we would be called and we would be expected to do something with it, but we may not have the skill set to deal with it. That's not a failing of them. It's a resource issue. Do we have the skill set and do we have the skill set and the capacity to deal with the issues as they happen? Not always, no.
So I feel this episode has turned into something like a psychiatrist couch session, where really what you've just allowed us to do is get these things off our chest that we hear a lot and really annoy us.
No, I think, we've worked in IT for a long time. We see stuff like this in organisations. It's a lot of time there are challenges like this, but they're not always surfaced. So I think it's for organisations to maybe kind of appreciate that and, take stock of it.
Well, yeah. I think that feels like a good place to stop. But hey, if you're watching and you've got some common IT misconceptions you'd like me and Jason to get off our chest on your behalf, let us know. We'll be happy to moan about these kind of things anytime you like. Just don't tell Wayne whatever you do. So, well, I feel like we did such a cheesy intro that what we really should do to exit this show is that the screen should fade to dark and me and you sit in the background pretending we're talking, because that's how all good 70s chat shows ended. But I feel I'm dropping that kind of on the podcast production team way too late in the day to do that. So what we'll say for now is, Jason, thanks for that, and thanks, I think, for this cathartic session of getting IT misconceptions off our chest.
I'm going to go for the Wayne's World ending.
So, well, on that Wayne's World ending, being as Wayne's in a different world today, we'll stop there. Look, thanks for watching. If you want to make sure you catch all episodes of podcasts, then do subscribe. Find us on YouTube. Find us in all good homes of podcasts, and you find us on gardenersystems.co.uk/podcast. But until next time, thanks for watching.